Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me, tmosso@thewatchbox.com. It's in the description below. Your purchase and pricing email question line for buying this or any watch you see on any of our platforms. Reach out to me directly. Email tmosso@thewatchbox.com. Today we are discussing one of the rarest and most appealing Omega Seamaster Diver 300-meter dials. This is the Seamaster Diver 300-meter midsize Marui exclusive edition. Sold through the Japanese department store Marui exclusively for the Japanese domestic market. It's one of a long succession of Omega watches built specifically for Japanese domestic market consumption. It is a mid-size in stainless steel, which means an agreeable 36.25 millimeter case diameter, 11.4 millimeters thick, and from lug tip to lug tip 43 millimeters if we include the solid end links of the bracelet, 48.2 millimeters across the wrist, and it has a 19 millimeter spacing between the lugs. The Marui red dial to me is rivaled only by the iridescent blue dial. If you're familiar with the electric blue dial, you know what I'm talking about. This gives that a run for the money. A very different look, but just as intense and appealing. Now on the wrist, you can see the mid-size wears beautifully. I would be happy wearing either the full size, which I own, or this mid-size, which has a respectable span across the wrist. 48 plus is not tiny when you include the end links of the bracelet. The watch could wear on a smaller wrist if you were to put it on a strap. On a strap, I can see this being a great match for a wrist as small as 13 centimeters circumference, but on the bracelet with those end links, I'm going to say 13.5 centimeters circumference is going to be your minimum wrist size. It's flat too, pre-coaxial, under 11.5 millimeters thick. It will slide underneath the dress cuff if you want to wear it that way. And that's not a bad idea, as this 90s style Diver 300 meter bracelet has always looked like a hybrid of a sports bracelet and a dress bracelet. Like a sports bracelet, it's solidly constructed, but like a dress bracelet, it has many individual links. Relatively small links with tiny polished intermediates and a pronounced tumble home on the shoulder links gives it a little bit of a dressy air. It is solid though, and you can see removable links are fixed in place by pins and sleeves. So not only are you not going to strip out the screw heads, but these aren't going to back out. You will, however, need a block and punch, as you can see if you want to size this at home. Now there's an intermediate size link in there in case you are in between sizes. And then primarily for use over a dive suit or a thick winter coat or sweater, you have the thick gauge steel machined fold out extension. You can see that the engraving on the clasp is still very deep and pronounced, so this watch in excellent condition, not excessively refinished over the years. Thick gauge steel twin trigger release, a thick gauge steel single swing arm, tolerances remain crisp. Rolling around the case, it's quite familiar. Lyre style lugs, inward bevel, outward bevel. The outward bevels are polished, and the polish, though it thins out at the mid case, runs from end to end on both sides. We have the helium escape valve, screw it out, and then when you are surfacing from your saturation dive, an internal pressure exceeds external pressure by 2 to 3 bar. Provided the valve is open, it will release helium from inside the watch without blowing out the seals or the sapphire. 300 meter rated dive depth. Yep, I know. 1,000 feet, not 300 meters. Lazy conversion, but everyone does it. The bezel, crisp and 120 click. We'll do a quick loom shot here. And you can see the famed skeleton or James Bond hands, as they're sometimes known. This generation of Omega Seamaster was made famous on the wrist of Pierce Brosnan during his 90s to early 2000s turn as 007. You can see all three hands are loomed, which is nice on a diver because you know in the dark and the depths whether your watch is still running. This is a little bit more upscale, though, than the watch that Brosnan wore, because you can see that instead of a printed dial here, we have polished applique indices. We also have the famed Omega Wave. The dial is a red lacquer with the waveform raised above the base. It is quite attractive and subtle. From an arm's length, you don't really notice it, but the closer you get, the more the light plays across the surface and highlights all of those elements of texture. The bezel is very crisp, but also well preserved. With 120 click action, it's precise, and you can see that the blue lacquer inside the recesses of the bezel completely intact. That's always something I look for in Diver 300 meters to see how well they've survived the ravages of years. Taking a quick look on the reverse side, we have the seahorse or the hippocampus in that wave design again. Inside the case, Omega caliber 1120. It's based on an ETA 2892A2 and chronometer spec. So it is a COSC chronometer adjusted in 5 positions. It pivots on 23 joules. It has a 44-hour bidirectional winding power reserve, a 4 hertz beat rate. It does feature a hacking or stop seconds function, and there is a quick set so you can rapidly cycle the date should the watch run down or encounter an irregular length month. And it's important to note that there were some changes from the 2892 to the Omega 1120. Big changes include the finishing of the movement. It's better decorated in the Omega. We go from 21 to 23 joules, most of that in the winding system. And then you gain 2 extra hours of power reserve, going from 42 to 44. So while the movement is ETA-based, it is heavily customized, especially aesthetically, for Omega application and chronometer certified. Reach out to Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details of this Japanese market mid-size Marui limited series. Just to be clear, that's limited by availability, not production number.